Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome to another Wednesday night edition of the Curtain Call. I'm your guest host, filling in for Geoffery Benedict, Kevin Tate, and we got the usual OG for the Curtain Call, the big homie Shannon White. What's up, Shannon?
How you doing this evening, brother Kevin? I'll tell you, it's not a lot happening at mini camp as far as breaking news. So we've had to do a deep dive to find out some of the happenings that's been going on.
Yeah, man, and it'll only get worse after tomorrow.
Yep.
It'll only get worse after tomorrow. We're gonna be making up podcast things to talk about. You guys be making up articles and everything, man. But you know, it's that time of year. It's like a kid at Christmas, man. We only got one more month before everything gets officially rolling, right? Sometime in July, towards the end, maybe about 5 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, man. Well, tonight we're just gonna talk about whatever we can talk about, man. So the first thing I got, Shannon, man, that we're gonna talk about is first. Let me play this clip from this morning's Let's Ride, Jeff Hartman,
Mm-hmm.
and then we want to talk about why do you think, and I'll tell you why I think the Steelers are so successful with OTA and minicamp participation.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what Jeff had to say this morning.
Here's the thing. The Steelers have had fantastic attendance. I wrote this article for the website on Tuesday, and I said, man, the term mandatory minicamp, it just doesn't even seem to fit. They've had great attendance this entire OTA Phase 3. Yes, TJ Watt missed the first day of Phase 3. He showed up every day after that, hasn't missed one since. Larry Ogunjobi missed the first 2 days. You had spot misses by someone like Cam Hayward. They have been there. They have been consistent. Braden Fihoko, I'm sorry, he said to Steelers.com, when you see TJ Watt and Cam Hayward out there going 100% in these not mandatory, voluntary workouts, what makes you raise your game? And so that's why I was like, mandatory minicamp, it just seems like it's another practice, doesn't it? It just seems like nothing changes. That's fantastic news. On the day that you hear that Stephon Diggs and what's going on up in Buffalo, I don't know. You've got a whole lot of other players around the league. Saquon Barkley's not going to mandatory minicamp. Danielle Hunter up in Minnesota's not going to mandatory minicamp. Thank the Lord that the Steelers don't have that type of distraction. They don't. Not at all. You know, you don't have Alex Highsmith saying, I want a new deal. I'm not showing up. No, he's there. He's working. You know, you don't have the Deontay Johnson situation from 2 years ago, or I think it might have been last year, where he was contemplating, a hold in, where he showed up to training camp. He just didn't practice. TJ Watt did the same thing 2 years ago. It's one of those situations where, thankfully, the Steelers don't have those headaches this year. At least not yet.
Okay, Shannon. So Jeff had a lot to say right there in a real little bit of time, man.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the reason is the Steelers have such a high participation rate in the OTAs and minicamp?
Well, one of the things that really helps is there's nobody really in a contract situation. In the past, they've had Le'Veon Bell, who didn't show up. They had Antonio Brown that would cause some ripples, and even TJ, as Jeff mentioned, and Deontay last year. They would show up, but it was, like you said, a hold in. They wouldn't really participate in everything. This year, you just got Alex Highsmith, and Alex is the kind of guy that he's going to be out there regardless. That's one of the reasons why I think he's the perfect Steeler, and the Steelers have so much admiration and respect for him, not just as a player, but as a person. And I think that they know that they've pretty much got this deal worked out, but they're just fine-tuning it and coming to an agreement, hopefully, before training camp. So you have a team that hasn't won a playoff game in quite a few seasons, and they're hungry. They're a proud franchise that have not played up to their own expectations for the last 6 years, let's say. So I think they're hungry and ready to get out there and compete. And as Jeff mentioned, and one of the players mentioned, when you see TJ and Cam Hayward and these guys going full blast, or giving a complete effort, even in OTAs and minicamp, that sets the standards for the rest of your team.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I agree with you 100%. I do think Even the fact when Deontay, TJ, when those guys are holding in, that's different than what happens with other players. I mean, we got
Yeah.
Stephon Diggs holding out, Saquon Barkley holding out.
Mm-hmm.
The lineman up in Minnesota is holding out. So players hold out, but I think with Steeler players, I think it's more a cultural thing. The Steeler culture, I think they want to be there because it's like a brotherhood. They want to be there for the brothers. They want to be there for the organization, for Mr. Rooney and management.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be there for Coach Tomlin. So I think they try and find a way to still show up. If they don't have something really urgent going on
Mm-hmm.
during the time of OTAs, well, minicamp's pretty mandatory, but even OTAs, everybody doesn't show up to minicamp like we just said. So when they show up, I think it's because it's bigger than just whatever the one person's issue is.
Yep.
Like I said, it's a brotherhood. It's about the organization. It's about Coach Tomlin. It's about all those different facets that make those guys show up. And I love it, man. It only in the long run is going to make you a better team.
Well, I think they also realize that, it all comes down to Kenny Pickett. If Kenny Pickett's the real deal, if you look how the Steelers are constructed right now, their salary cap situation, dead money coming off the books after the end of this year, they are really set up to make some noise in a very tough AFC. And guys, again, I think a lot of it is as you said, the culture, and a lot of it's pride. They have not been successful like what the Steelers call success for quite a few seasons now. And I think that they realize that they're fully committed to getting back there. You're muted, Kevin.
I'm sorry. Thanks, man. I mean, just wanted to talk about that. Since we're talking about minicamp, we wanted to just address the great participation rate that the Steelers have. So that's a good thing.
Yep.
So Shannon, we're 2 days into minicamp. What are we hearing? What are we thinking?
One of the things that I've noticed, and I started noticing it towards the end of OTAs, that Pat Freiermuth was not as actively participating. And a lot of days he didn't have his helmet on. And he would just go through some drills maybe where he didn't need to have the helmet. But they come out just a few hours ago that he admitted that he is dealing with some kind of injury. Now, he did not disclose what kind of injury, but that he said he should be fine by training camp. And he wanted to be at minicamp, but he wanted to get the work in and the camaraderie and know what he needs to work on away, during the time between minicamp and training camp. But he's not being able to participate fully. So that's the one thing you don't want to have during OTAs or minicamp is any kind of injury. And we know that Miller has been wide receiver, has been dealing with a hamstring injury through OTAs and a couple other nagging injuries. So that was the only one I was really familiar with. So finding out about Freiermuth has been a little bit concerning. But it sounds like he'll be fine for training camp, and that's the main thing. We're hearing some good things coming out. We talked about it on Monday, and now we're hearing that Akeem Butler's made some plays. He's flashed. And he really should. I mean, with his size, speed, and catch radius, during OTAs, he should really be able to make some plays. And he even said it himself. He said, it doesn't matter until I do it at training camp. Until he does it when there is contact. So, but I like his attitude that he's not, making it more than it actually is. But, his teammates and coaches are talking about it. So it's a positive first impression with the team. So that's really good. We're hearing some really good things about Mark Robertson. Some people come out and said, because Terrell Austin said that they could see Mark Robertson competing for a starting position next year. And everybody's like, oh, man, he must not be living up to expectations. That's not it. The Steelers knew he was a long shot to make the team as the 7th rounder. He was a project. converting from running back. Well, he exceeded expectations. Well, he's already ahead of expectations this year, is that he's viewed he's going to be a regular contributor and part of the rotation. So he's ahead of the game. He might not be ready to start, but he will be playing meaningful minutes. So all Troy Austin was saying is that if he keeps progressing as he is now, he could be in line to be a starter next year. So those are a couple of stories that's come out so far that I've found very intriguing.
People forget Mark Robinson up until 3 years ago was playing running back. Mm-hmm. So, it only stands to reason that there's a learning curve. He has the athleticism, the ability, and obviously the Steelers see something in him. He's a 7th-round pick in 2022, and they kept him, and he played meaningful minutes at the end of the season. He's going to be a part of the special team. So, I think he's right on track to where he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Speaking of running backs, one thing I heard is that Jaylen Warren looks really nice.
Oh yeah, I heard the same thing. He's even more jacked up. Last year, somebody gave him the nickname Muscle Hamster, which was a Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back in the day. I can't remember his name, but
Doug Martin.
Oh yes, and Warren does look like a muscled up hamster. He really does. But he's even more jacked up this year, and he seems like he's even quicker. Maybe it's just he's more confident and he's hitting these drills even faster. But I mean, he put on some size, but he looks just as quick, if not quicker. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about that.
What do you see the workload split being between he and Najee?
I've said for a long time I'd like to see a 60-40.
60-40.
Just because Najee got so abused that first year.
Right.
And we know the shelf life of running backs, and the Steelers are just now putting the offensive line in front of these guys. And I think if you could get a split, that's about what the Cowboys did with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard last year. And it really helped both players. And I would love to see the Steelers shoot for somewhere in that range, because even if they're talking about using them both on the field at the same time,
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, and so hey, get your weapons out there, whatever you got to do.
Right. No, I'd really like to see that. Okay, so moving along real quick, so I'm gonna ask you a quick question. You're Omar Khan, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're about to finish mini camp, going into training camp. You got one move you're gonna make. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You can make this, but either or.
Oh. Well, it's actually going to depend on, what's it going to cost? Simmons is more of a coverage linebacker. He's very talented. But Simmons, it really wasn't that great in coverage for Arizona. Now, Arizona is not a good defense. They haven't been for a couple years. So it's hard to judge his numbers just based on that. But he has the athleticism to be a good coverage linebacker. And then we talked about Chase Young, which is a top 3 talent when healthy, something the Steelers are not going to get an opportunity to select a guy like that. So, again, it's going to depend on cost. I think that Tomlin, I believe Jeff's story, that his source about the Steelers being interested in Young.
Mm-hmm.
And if Young's value is down enough to where they can make a reasonable offer and a deal to get him, I would prefer Chase Young. Because, again, I think his long-term future is going to be a defensive end. And I see Cam Hayward getting older, and I would like to see a generational talent replace him.
Yeah, I probably agree with you. I think if we were looking for only the recency bias, the urgency of right now,
mm-hmm.
you probably would go Simmons.
Mm-hmm.
we kind of can use a coverage linebacker, but if we go and thinking past 2023
mm-hmm.
and beyond, yeah, I got to go with Chase Young, man.
Yep.
Especially if you can get him for 40 cents on the dollar.
Oh yeah. somebody's saying a third-round pick might get it done. I mean, you'd have to consider it.
You'd have to consider it. You definitely have to consider it. But I think we concur. We agree on that one because I would certainly be with the Chase Young side. And I like Isaiah Simmons. Loved Isaiah Simmons coming out of Clemson.
Yep.
I mean, I think they came out the same draft. I mean, Chase Young was 2, should have been 1 while Kyler Murray was a quarterback. Now, the Cardinals are, I don't know, that they could be regretting that. I mean, so they got rid of Josh Rosen to pick Kyler Murray. Now there's issues with Kyler Murray. So Chase Young was a number 2 pick, was the defensive rookie of the year, has 7.5 sacks. You know, and injury slows players down. We saw it happen to Devin Bush. I mean, so I fully think Chase Young, and he's only 24 years old. He'll be 24 years old all season. I think he turned 24 in March, so he'll be 25 next year.
And we can't not pretend that Washington isn't a dysfunctional franchise. I mean, there's a lot of guys that go in there and they're just like, I don't want to play here. I don't want to be here. I want to go somewhere else. So if you're trying to come back from an ACL injury, you know, who's to say you ain't like, well, I'm not coming back till I'm 100%. You know what I'm saying? And that might have been part of the reason why he hasn't been productive on the field the last couple of seasons.
Right. No, I completely agree with you again. So yeah, if Omar could get that move done, I'd love it. So moving on real quick, man, we're going to, what's what we came to talk about. What are they saying about Kenny Pickett, KPA? You guys know what we're talking about.
Yep.
But so I'm going to play a few clips from the week of what players and coaches have been saying about Kenny. Then on the other side, we'll talk about it. Mm-hmm. This is Allen Robinson guessing on the Rich Eisen show.
Mm-hmm.
The number one thing that sticks out to me, you know, aside from his talent is, you know, he's a leader, you know, and when I say a leader, you know, he's the guy who has a great command, you know, and seeing the command that he has of a team as a second-year player, man, it's pretty remarkable. You know, you don't see too many guys be able to kind of take the bull by the horns, how he's able to do that, you know, and just kind of get the command of everybody. You know, that's meeting-wise, that's pre-practice, post-practice, getting throws in after, you know. It typically takes a little bit longer for guys to kind of, you know, go through that maturation process and learn to take what they need and learn how to, you know, get some of the extra reps and steal some reps here or there, you know. But he's already on top of that, man. He's been on top of that since day one that I got here. And it's fun.
He's more comfortable. Kenny's a lot more comfortable. He's a quick learner too. He has a lot, you know, him being vocal, him understanding coverages, him being more in a comfortable place. I think that's what's going to separate him a lot. You know, him still learning and stuff like that. But, you know, Kenny, when he comes out here, you know, you see that he wants to have control. He wants to win. He's very competitive. You know, he wants that. And you want that in a quarterback, and you see that. So I think that's some things that I see that's different for him from last year. It's not like he's, you know, kind of just looked like a rookie. He's looked like a vet now.
I think Kenny's had a good spring. Obviously, every day is up and down, and, you know, every play quarterback, and then, you know, Coach Tomlin says it the best, right? It's football like not football. So I think he's improving, just seeing things, playing fast, getting some timing with the guys that you need to do as you become the starter, which last year he was learning, and we had obviously different situations. So I think Kenny's had a very good spring and excited about where he is.
How much more is he ready to take on from last year as a rookie?
Well, I think Kenny's extremely intelligent. I mean, I think it's a lot of that think always falls to, you know, to the quarterback, right? That's the easy way to look. And he was a rookie, and there's some things there. But how much more is the all offense ready to take on? Like I mentioned, we're better up front, and more experience up front. You know, 2 years ago we started, you know, a bunch of rookies.
You said it's, you know, not football like, but what are you looking to see from Kenny Pickett in this scenario? And what are you seeing?
All the things that come with being him, and we really don't have enough time in this setting to adequately describe it. Just know that he's working daily. He's diligent in terms of his approach. I like where he is.
Okay, Shannon. So that's a compilation of what players and coaches have been saying this week about Kenny. So what do we think about Kenny going to the 2023 season?
Well, I think we've been hearing these same phrases about leadership and control and maturity, all these things we've been talking about since the end of the season, all through the offseason with him and Mitch getting the guys together down in Florida and putting in work. And you've got a guy who's competed with you to be the starter last year, and now is signed on to stay long term, even though he knows that, you look like the future franchise quarterback. He has that kind of respect and a special connection with Kenny, and said that he wants to help him any way he can. When your backup quarterback says that says a lot about your preparation, the respect he's earned from his teammates. They see, you talked about Kyler Murray earlier with the Cardinals. When you see Kenny Pickett, the difference is Kenny Pickett is football focused. His world revolves around football. And now we know that he's getting married in, I think, a couple of weeks. And so, he'll be doing that during the dead period there between mini camp and training camp. And, but up to this point, I guarantee you, he's just focusing on football. That's who he is. He's not playing video games, and they don't have to put it in his contract. Well, you don't need to play so many hours of video games. You need to be, learning your playbook. With Kenny, you don't have to worry about that. So I think Kenny's ahead of schedule. One of the things about him being a little bit older as a second-year quarterback is that he is more mature. He realizes that everything's been accelerated. A lot of quarterbacks are in year 4 at his age, and he's going into year 2. So he's committed to taking control of this position. He's committed to being building a winner now. And when you see that out of a young man, it just earns respect. You can't make anybody respect you. He earns respect from all his teammates. And they're all saying the same thing. And a lot of these guys have played with multiple quarterbacks, like Allen Robertson. So when Allen Robertson comes out and says, this guy has real leadership ability, and he throws a good ball, and he's accurate, all these things that we're hearing this week, we've been hearing all offseason. So that really is exciting in the fact that he isn't just showing up and having a really good OTA session and now minicamp. This is who he is. We seen some of this last year. I thought he was the best quarterback in camp last year, but they never give him a chance. He was working with the number 3s. Well, this year he's getting to work with the number 1s. He's the starter, and we're seeing what he can do.
Okay. Yeah, no. You said it all. I really don't have a take on that much that can add much more than what you said. I do have a couple comments in the live chat. Wes Hitchcock talking, if Chase Young comes here, he's getting paid $17 million a year, and he isn't better than Alex Highsmith. I think that's up for debate. I mean, Shannon and I said on the hangover the other day on Monday, Alex Highsmith plays his best when TJ Watt is on the field. I mean, both guys came out in the same draft. Highsmith was a 3rd round pick. Chase Young was 1st, 2nd overall. So I won't say that Highsmith is better than Chase Young. Highsmith, because of avoiding injuries in his first 3 years, has definitely had better production. So I will agree with that.
Mm-hmm. I actually think that, something we're not really talking about, but I'd like to see what Chase Young could do playing with TJ Watt. Playing with Alex Highsmith. I mean, because TJ Watt elevates the play around him. We know this. And I think that a guy like Chase Young, they had a really good defensive line in Washington.
Yeah.
So Young had some really good teammates around him on the defensive line, but none of them compared to what he would have in Pittsburgh.
He had Montez Sweat opposite him.
Yeah.
As a rusher. And
he'd have Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Megan Fitzpatrick. I mean, the Steelers defense is really loaded. Patrick Peterson. I mean, and they got all this young talent. So Chase Young could really take a big step forward because TJ Watt has the tendency to do that.
No, I agree. I mean, we just got done watching the NBA Finals, NBA Championship. TJ Watt is to the Steelers what Joker is to the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yes.
Again, Wes, Kyler Murray's a terrible passer. I don't think Kyler Murray's a terrible passer. I think he has one of the prettiest balls in the league. He has a terrible work ethic.
Yes.
You know, that like Shannon said, that's definitely where Kenny, trumps him, supersedes him.
Mm-hmm.
But he throws a pretty ball. Okay, so we said what we had to say about Kenny. I'm thinking Shannon right now is a good breaking point real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're watching on YouTube, stay with us. We're not going anywhere. We're just going to take a pause to pay some bills. You listen to audio. Let's listen to these couple ads and we'll be right back. And we're back on the Wednesday night curtain call. I'm your guest host, Kevin Tate, sitting in for Geoffery Benedict with the OG homie, Shannon White, the regular here. So, we've been talking about minicamp. We've been talking about what everybody's saying about Kenny Pickett. We talked a little bit about why the Steelers training camp and minicamp and OTA participation is so high. Now we're going to get into a couple different things. Got a couple more clips of what Najee, just short clips, what Najee had to say about the offense and what Kenny Pickett had to say yesterday and today. Let's check it out real quick, and Shannon and I will come out and talk about it on the other side.
Have you seen much changes within this offense from last year to this year and what they're asking you guys to do?
I don't want to go into details, but yeah.
I just feel like it's kind of like a natural transition. I don't try to force anything. I just want to step up when I feel like I need to step up. And we have a lot of great veteran guys in the O-line and young guys in the offense that are all pushing in the same direction. So I think it's definitely a group effort, but I'll step up wherever I feel I need to.
So, Shannon, those were two short clips. Najee said he's noticed some changes.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were just speculating from what we've heard coming out of camp, from some of the interviews we've seen, if we're just putting together a big puzzle about the Steelers offense, what are we thinking some of those differences will be this year?
Well, it's funny. They was interviewing Matt Canada, and he said, well, it's not like I'm out here really, putting together the offense. And, and that kind of is confusing because he's the offensive coordinator.
Right.
So if anybody's designing the offense, it's him. I think what he meant, he says that he don't think there'll be a lot of changes this year. But all the players are saying that there is, that it looks different. And I think what he's saying is it's still his playbook, but now he has more talent, more weapons that he can use to create mismatches, and that it's still going to be the offense that he's wanted to run, but now he'll just have the horses to do it. So I think we're going to see a more variety of the personnel. I think we can see 3 tight ends on the field at the same time, along with Connor Hayward. So you can have basically 3 tight ends and an H-back on the field with only one wide receiver. You could have Harris and Warren on the field at the same time. You could put, as we talked before, Darnell Washington on the field with Calvin Austin III and then move him around pre-snap. If that defense isn't prepared for Washington's massive size and mobility or Calvin Austin's speed and elusiveness, if you get the wrong defender on the wrong guy, they're toast. So there is a lot this year that they can do, not even taking into the wide receivers into account. And besides, I'm talking about Calvin Austin III, but we know that Allen Robertson, what he can bring. What if Akeem Butler, if he makes the team with that catch radius and size and speed? So I think we're going to see a lot. Some guys get fewer snaps. A guy like Deontay Johnson get a lot fewer targets, but have a more versified, creative offense. And one thing's for sure, they got to score more points. So I think that's the whole plan, is to not only move the ball effectively like they did in the second half of last year, but be able to score touchdowns in the red zone.
Yeah, man. The personnel packages that they can put out there this year, the different combinations. Like, I mean, I couldn't even name them all. You know what I mean? Yep. There's so many that I would like to see, and that we probably will see. I mean, the red zone stuff. If you can have Freiermuth for Washington, and have Pickens and Butler with Najee or Warren in the backfield. I mean, you know, you can go big. You can have Washington and Freiermuth both in line. You can have Connor Hayward in the slot.
Yep.
I mean, you can have both Najee and Warren in the backfield. There's so much you can do. So I always thought Canada was real creative when he was in college, especially that 1 year at Pitt that they upset Clemson, I think 2016. I mean, I watched that game. I just thought, like, James Conner was there. I think Nathan Peterman was the quarterback.
Yeah.
And those guys were just – and I think Clemson was ranked number 1. And Canada was just throwing so much stuff out there to keep that Clemson defense off balance. If we could get anything similar to that, that would be great. That's what I'm hoping for. I gave Canada a pass his first year because, you know, Ben was kind of old, so he couldn't really run his offense. They had to run shotgun because Ben couldn't move that much, and Ben liked shotgun, like turn his back to the defense. Then last year we got Mitch and Kenny. Really don't know at the beginning of the season. We know Mitch is the quarterback, but then after 4 games, like, nah, Mitch's not quarterback. So we throw a rookie in there. And so, you know, after the bye, they played a lot better. So the offseason and training camp to the regular season is one big, long bye.
Yeah.
So they should be able to be much crisper, much better, much efficient. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, one of the things that we say with Kenny Pickett, where you didn't get time working with the starters last year, you know, it showed up in his performance. And he really never developed chemistry and timing with Deontay Johnson. Johnson got so many targets just because he could get open so quickly. But the difference now is they've strengthened this offensive line by bringing in Samalu. You got Daniels in his second year in the system. Cole. One thing that no quarterback, especially a young quarterback, likes is congestion around his feet. He wants to be able to step up into a clean pocket. They're talking already that this year they're working with Kenny Pickett on not, you know, abandoning the pocket so quickly. But why he was doing that last year is because so many times Dotson would just blow his block and allow instant pressure right up the middle. And it would force Kenny out to one side or the other. Well, that's not going to be an issue anymore with Samalu around. So I think that you're going to see a more confident Kenny Pickett, because a comfortable quarterback is a confident quarterback. And he's going to feel comfortable in the pocket. And you can help on the outside. If you're going up against a great pass rusher and the Steelers are going to be facing quite a few of them, you can chip block with that running back before he goes out into his route. And you can give help there, but it's hard to give help if a guy's getting instantly beat on the interior in pass protection like Kevin Dotson did quite often last year. And when Dan Moore struggled, it was usually because somebody gave him a half step and then beat him to the inside. You know, got him off balance and then beat him inside. So Pickett's seen a lot of pressure coming in his face up the middle. I think that will be different this year. And that will allow Pickett to be more confident, stand in there, and see those plays last year. He missed some opportunities because he was running for his life. So I think this year we'll see Kenny more confident, more composed, and hit on a lot of those potential splash plays.
Yeah, man. Couple of things about the O-line. You brought it up. Dotson last year, I mean, I think the majority of the time he was beat, like you said, off quick moves to the inside.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a few times last year that you may as well put syrup on Dotson because he was getting pancaked.
Yeah.
So I don't think we have the same issue with Samalo in there. So I definitely think that's an upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
My other question is, since we last were on together on Monday on the Hangover, I've been hearing something. We talked about it, but this is since Monday to today. Been hearing some things, man. I mean, how viable is a true competition between Dan Moore and Chooks? I hear it's going to be one.
Yeah, I think it's very viable because, it's really going to depend on Broderick Jones. If Broderick Jones, if they believe he's really ready and capable of starting the season at left tackle, and they see that pretty early in camp and preseason, I think you'll see, them kind of alternate at right tackle, Moore and Okorafor, in the preseason to give them, both a good bit of reps and experience in case somebody goes down, but also to see is Moore, how capable is he as a candidate to replace Okorafor. I was really intrigued by something that Pat Meyer said today, and that they have 4 or 5 backup center possibilities. And so I think, we're all thinking Kendrick Green. It would be one. But then, he mentioned Nate Herbig, which would be my favorite because he's going to kind of be the swing interior guy.
Right.
If he can also be that backup center capable, that would be great. He mentioned guys like James Daniels, but you don't want to move James.
You don't
because he's could be a Pro Bowl guard this year because he almost was last year. But then he mentioned
you got Spencer
McCollum, who wasn't at camp today for whatever reason. But he also mentioned Spencer Anderson.
Yeah.
And we also got to remember even Samalu played some center. But that's like asking Minka Fitzpatrick to play strong safety. Minka Fitzpatrick is an all-pro free safety. You don't want him wasting his talents at strong safety. Same thing with Samalu. But what he was basically saying is that they feel like they've got the backup center already, and they've got multiple candidates who could do that. And I agree with him. I think that, it's not a for sure thing that Kendrick Green makes the roster. So he really needs to be focused and really balls out here at training camp in the preseason to show that he is fully committed to learn the center position.
Yeah, just like all offensive linemen, I don't think you learn anything in OTAs and minicamp about offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. I mean, Kendrick Green has to be ready to come out to training camp with his pads on.
Yep.
And just be willing to go after it, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he has to do. The offensive line battle, battles that's going to go on in training camp, I think is probably one of the most intriguing positional battles that the Steelers will have.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one more, and we're going to talk about this one real quick. And the other positional battle I think is going to be intriguing, Shannon, going into camp. Let's talk about the avatars, man. What do you think about these guys?
Well, if you've read my article today, I've talked about going into the offseason. I've been talking for a few years now that I wanted the Steelers to get faster because they had one of the slowest secondaries in football for years now. And last year, there was a lot of things they wanted to do that they were hindered by their lack of speed because they couldn't match up in press or man coverage, for very long. If they did, they were going to get exposed. And we've seen that against, say, the Buffalo Bills, Philadelphia Eagles. If that pass rush didn't get home, they got toasted. And so now they go out and they get guys who not only have decent speed, but have exceptional length. And if you'd have told me the Steelers would get one guy like Joey Porter Jr. in this draft that could be their future cornerback one, I'd have been ecstatic. But they lucked in. They had the good fortune of Corey Trice falling all the way to the 7th round. If you asked me before the draft, who was the closest comparison to Joey Porter Jr. in the whole draft class at cornerback, it was Corey Trice. And the Steelers got both of them. I had talked in one of the mock drafts about the Steelers getting Porter in the 1st round and getting Trice in the 4th round. And I thought that would have been great value. They got Porter in the 2nd and Trice in the 7th. So, it's funny. They asked Trice what he thought about being called an avatar corner, and he didn't know what that was. So he obviously hadn't seen the movie. But I was wondering, were they just thinking they're going to press more this year? But when they talked to Terrell Austin and Grady Brown, they said that they were really thinking about the deep passing game from, say, against the Bengals or the Bills or one of these top AFC teams, that guys with length like that can really, they get longer when they get down the field in them jump ball situations, them deep balls. And so they realize they've had a problem for the last few seasons in that regard. And so they brought in these two young men who are extremely talented. And in Corey Trice, in his case, extremely underrated, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Hey, Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks did the same thing last year.
Mm-hmm.
They got Tariq Wooten, a big 6'3" rangy corner. He was really good. I don't know if he had any awards or accolades, but he was really good. He came in and started. And they in the 4th round they picked up Kobe Bryant, not the basketball player, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Kobe Bryant from the University of Cincinnati, a 6'1", 195-pound corner. He turned out to be a stolen gem. He's really good. So I think Seattle has their 2 young cornerbacks of the future.
Yep.
He was really good at Cincinnati. Kobe Bryant, he played opposite of Sauce.
Yeah.
So he got a lot through his way and he held up. Mm-hmm. Those Cincinnati teams, those couple of years were really good teams.
Oh yeah.
And it had a lot to do with the secondary and those 2 guys. And Tariq Wooten was, I think, 6'3", ran like a 4.3 40, just a freak. I think it went to like Texas, San Antonio, one of those small schools. Mm-hmm. But Pete Carroll likes that size, going back to Richard Sherman and Browner and Cam Chancellor and all those guys. So I like the bigger corners. Let's real quick see what Coach T had to say about his avatars.
Mike, what do you like about your young DBs, your Joey Porter Jr. and Corey Trice? Just what kind of advantage do they have in being bigger DBs than you drafted recently?
I think that story is going to be told with how they play. Length is an asset if you're clean. So they got to be penalty free. They got to know which way they're going. Sometimes when you're short, your COD is excellent. When you're out of place, you make up things faster. When you're long, you don't. And so they're very much writing their story about what they're capable of being. I like their attentiveness. I like the attributes that they bring, but it's premature to kind of paint a picture of where they are.
So that's Coach T's take. And he usually won't boost up too many rookies.
No.
That's not his thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I could think about over the years, maybe some of the rookies he's boosted, it would probably be Pouncey, probably be Shazier and Najee.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are coming in and going to start. And I think at the time, Keith Butler tried to hold Shazier back a little bit, because they didn't want to play rookies, kind of like they did Kenny last year, but they couldn't keep Shazier off the field. But yeah, so what he's saying, and the COD is changing direction. Shorter corners have a better change of direction. But these guys seem real fluid, and their hips seem real smooth, man.
Yeah, if you watch, I don't know how many times I used to get so mad when the Steelers would play the Seahawks. And Antonio Brown, I mean, nobody could cover him. But their big corners were hands-on. They always had a hand on him. A jersey tug here, grab his forearm, something to keep him from separating. And I used to say, if you pass interfere on every play, they can't call every penalty. And the Seahawks did that. They consistently and religiously had blatant pass interference on every play, but you just couldn't call them all. And that's one advantage that length has. When you have that extremely long wingspan, you can keep a hand on a guy and just hinder him a little bit. Just don't let him pull away from you if he's quicker than you in a short area. So when Coach T's talking about being clean, I think we talked about it before. We might have talked about it Monday. When they signed Patrick Peterson, they knew all along, we're going to draft. Our next cornerback is going to be a future number one, potentially athletically, and he's going to have length. And they're saying, we're going to get another guy who knows how the tricks of the trade, how to do a little jersey pull and a little wrist grab and all these little things that Peterson has learned through the years. And he's teaching, Porter and Trice right now how to do that. So I think it was a brilliant move from the signing Peterson to realizing they had an opportunity and they got two guys like that in the draft. It couldn't have worked out any more beautifully.
Yeah, Pat P said in the interview, watch this All Things Covered podcast. This was a few weeks ago now. But he said his first matchup against Calvin Austin III, CA3.
Yeah.
He said, man, this dude fast. But he said he had to get on the inside, give him a little tug to allow me to catch up. And those are the tricks of the trade that these guys are learning from a future Hall of Famer early. I think that's going to be immeasurable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's Peterson might only be maybe through next year. We'll see how this year goes. But he is like having another coach out there, another position coach. But he's teaching things that your average secondary coach doesn't know how to teach.
Right.
And he's doing it from a position. He can do it on the sidelines. When they come off, the defense comes off the field, he can say, hey, I'm seeing this. I'm seeing that. I'm using this tactic on this receiver, and he's not liking it. And, if one of them get matched up on him, they can try to, duplicate that. Because some guys don't like hands-on. Some guys don't want to get pressed, and they get frustrated, and it takes them out of their game. And so I think that Peterson is going to bring a level of experience and know-how and knowledge that the Steelers haven't had. Because even Joe Hayden played the position a certain way. And he got more crafty as he got older because he lost some athleticism. Peterson's still highly athletic. I mean, he still can outrun Cam Sutton. Let's put it that way.
Right.
But he will be able to share a unique perspective with these two young guys that we haven't seen that in a good while.
Yeah, no, you're right. And let's walk through this real quick. Just the division. And I'm gonna tell you what I think. I think the only receiver, two receivers now in the division that I think physicality and press at the snap doesn't affect them. I think that's Jamar Chase. And I think that's Zay Flowers, newly drafted rookie to Baltimore. But I think Amari Cooper, physicality and press affects him. Odell Beckham, physicality and press affects him. Even T. Higgins for the Bengals, great receiver. But I think if you man him up with, because he's kind of big, T. Higgins probably about 6'3", But if you match him up with somebody equally as tall and long, probably stronger, press him at the line of scrimmage, and then can run with him, I think that throws his whole game off.
Well, I don't know if you remember, twice the James Pierre was covered T. Higgins and had good coverage on him and was running with him. But T. Higgins just went straight up, just like Pierre wasn't even there because Pierre didn't have ball awareness. He didn't know where the ball was.
Right.
He never got off the ground, and Higgins just made easy touchdown catches on him twice. And so, you start seeing Pierre matched up with Higgins.
That was the second game last year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you see Higgins matched up with Pierre, and you're like, oh, no. I mean, because, I think the one thing we're going to see out of Joey Porter Jr. and Corey Trice is based on what I've seen on their collegiate film, they have really good ball awareness, and they high point that ball. They're good at getting their hands in there with that long reach. So, but it don't matter if you're long if you don't have ball awareness. So I think they will. But again, they got to prove it on the field.
Do we see a path for Corey Trice mid-season to get playing time over Levi Wallace?
I think that we see Wallace. He's really solid in the type of coverage the Steelers ran last year. He can press because
a lot of zone stuff where he's looking at the quarterback.
That's what I'm saying. If they do a lot more press, he did some press at Buffalo, but he really, he does not have the speed. So, like, if there's a guy that if he misses, his contact coming off the line, if he misses his press attempt, he's going to get put in a trail position and he can be in trouble. So, I'd like to see Trice. I think they'll try to work him in the beginning against size. Like you say, maybe against the T. Higgins or maybe in the slot if a team's using a receiving movement tight end, say a Kelsey, or even if they put Andrews in there, they might try Trice and match him up if the guy's really hurting them, like Terrell Edmonds used to do. I could see them using Trice in that scenario. So I think he'll get some time. I don't think he'll be taking playing time away from Wallace per se, because Wallace is going to be a starter. But I think Trice will get some work in according to matchups.
No, yeah, I think you're right. I'm looking forward to seeing those two big rangy corners both out there on each side of the field with Patrick Peterson in some kind of move position from the slot to the middle of the field. KZ coming up, Pat P going back. So much they can do. I'm looking forward to it. But Shannon, we're about to get ready to get out of here, man. Before we do, I'd like to pay our respects from, obviously you've heard it already in the Steel Curtain Network. This is from Shannon and I on the Curtain Call. And that's the Pittsburgh media sports legend, Stan Sarvan. He was a giant in the Pittsburgh sports industry, Western Pennsylvania, Western PA Sports Hall of Fame, Pirates Media Wall Hall of Fame. He's been doing Pittsburgh sports media since 1970, man. He passed away I believe on the 13th, maybe it was the 12th, the other day. Mm-hmm. And just wanted to pay our respects to him. If we just can have a moment of silence in honor of Stan Sarvan. Thanks, everybody. So, Shannon, man, it's been a great show. Loved hanging out with you, man. This 2 times this week, man.
Mm-hmm.
So, before we get ready to get out of here, man, you got anything coming up? Any new articles? Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to say? Shannon is going to be a guest on the Homies podcast this Friday. Man, today's Wednesday. Yeah. Friday. And we're gonna have John Sushin from the Fanatical Elves podcast, the Cleveland Browns podcast on FFSN. along with myself, B Dirk, Big G, and Pay. We're going to talk about, we're kind of going to set it up to where two of us ask each one of them questions. We're talking about a rivalry revived. We're talking about the Browns and Steelers actually meaning something again after, I mean, the Browns they had a good year. What was that, 2019?
2020.
2020? Yeah, okay. They had a good year then, but, their good years are so few and far between. But I think the entire division is going to be good this year. And so we're going to talk about it, mostly initially from a Steelers-Browns perspective, but we can't help but bleed in all the rivalry within the division. That's what we're going to talk about. And that's Friday on the Homies. But Shannon, I just wanted to plug that. But what's up? What's up with you, man?
Well, I always look forward to debating the Browns fans. So this will be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. And I wanted to just mention about Stan Sarvan. I used to call in. I live here in West Virginia, but I call in to Sports Beat and talk to Stan and Guy. And, of course, love the show. That I always had to say that first. And it was such a thrill just to get to ask the guys questions. Because podcast, it wasn't as common back then. So people can come on now and talk to us and ask us questions. But back then, we didn't get to do that. But, you could call in and talk to them. And I just thought the world of both them guys. And Stan just sounds like just an outstanding gentleman. And he will be missed. And, I had a much respect for him and his knowledge of not just the Steelers, but all Pittsburgh sports. Right. So he will definitely be missed. And as far as what I have coming out article-wise, we've had some of the guys talking about it here in our conversation that I'm writing an article about Mark Robertson because Terrell Austin said that, as we talked about early in the show, that Mark Robertson is a candidate to be a starter next year. And everybody's taking that as a negative, and that he's saying that Robertson isn't progressing to where he can be a starter. That's not what he's saying. They brought in Cole Holcomb and they brought in Landon Roberts to be the starters so that they can ease Robertson into the rotation. So what Terrell Austin said was not a knock against Robertson in any way. It was just a natural part of his progression. So I've got an article I'm working on that's going to be coming out talking about that.
Okay, no, that sounds interesting, man. I mean, I listen to a lot of the audio podcasts. I don't read as much as I should. Even when I read a book, it's an audio book. I haven't turned pages in 7 or 8 years, man. But so the article's right there on the website, so I can go to it and check it out. But yeah, man. So have you met John yet? Sushin from the Browns?
No, I've not had an opportunity yet.
Don't try and talk to him now, man. We're gonna get y'all two strangers in the wind, bumping heads about Steelers and Browns.
Yep.
Love it. But for myself, man, we'll be on Friday, the Homies, 8 p.m. Like I kind of gave you a gist of what the show's about. You can check me out on the FSCN Sports Network, the Cleveland Cavalier. That's rather Cavalier podcast. We got a lot of off-season stuff going on, potential trades, the drafts coming up, free agency's coming up. We're talking about all this stuff as it pertains not only to the Cavaliers, but the entire NBA. So if you're an NBA fan, check us out wherever you get your audio podcasts. And my other baby, I'll call it, is the Know It Alls podcast. I'll do that with Big G from the Homie Podcast and Mod. We come on Sundays on YouTube at 6 p.m. if you're available. This Father's Day, check us out. We're going to give a tribute to our deceased fathers this weekend. That's one of the things we're doing. But yeah, check us out. Go to YouTube, Know It All, spelled KNOITALLZ. And that's where I'm at. So we'll get ready to wrap up, Shannon, to get out of here. I think we both got long-winded. We want to keep it under 50 to 55 minutes. But if we peace out in the next 15 seconds, we're exactly at an hour, man. So Go ahead and do what you're doing. Let's get out of here, bro.
Have a great one, guys.
Peace, Steeler Nation.